Well, we've seen a lot of nasty personal attacks this election, but when are we going to hear about some policy? Well, let's go and have a look. Let's go and have a look what the government's policy planks are, the key policies. Now, going to their policy page on the website, it says a strong economy means we can deliver. Now, we'll get to that in a sec, but the two major points about the coalition over time, traditionally, they've campaigned on national security, strong on national security, and superior economic management. Strong on defence, strong on the economy. That is the refrain. Okay, so let's look at them one by one. A strong economy means we can deliver more jobs with unemployment below 4%. Okay, they've been running hard on the unemployment number, but let's have a look at it. At 4%, it is hovering around record lows. But why is it hovering at record lows? Because that's their number one boast, jobs at the moment, because we've just had a 2-year freeze on migration thanks to the pandemic. And the main things here aren't the number of unemployed, but it's underemployment. That is the real figure. Does it take you 3 jobs in the gig economy to make a living? Wages have been stagnant for a decade of coalition rule. And the other point about the unemployment figures is that you only need to work for 1 hour a week to be considered to be employed. So therefore, underemployment is the key figure, and wage stagnation, of course, is the other big one, but we don't hear about those. Let's look at the second plank now of the big coalition policy manuscript. It's manifesto. Here it is on the website. The second point is we can deliver tax relief for workers and small business. Well, that's totally correct. If you're a worker on above $130,000 a year, if you're up to $300,000, you might get $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 back in your tax. But unfortunately for the majority of Australians, lower to middle income earners, there's a little tax offset coming off, and the entire mainstream media missed this in the budget. It's called LMITO, the lower and middle income tax offset. And when that comes off, that means that workers are going to be $50 a week worse off. They are going to get slugged more than $1,000 on average across the economy, up to 10 million low and middle income earners. Anybody between 30,000 and 125,000. So that's a lie. Next one is record investment in health and other essential services. The pandemic obviously meant they had to invest in health, as did every other government in the world, so that figure is complete fallacy. It's a red herring. Next one is better roads and cleaner energy. Well, better roads, now correct me if I'm wrong, but state governments manage the roads. They're the ones that pay for the roads, unless there's some big ticket item where there's a combined agreement, the feds and the states, to fund them together. So that's states, that's a red herring. And cleaner energy. Well, we don't have to talk much about cleaner energy, only to say that they've got 100 to 120 new fossil fuel projects on the boil, despite global authorities saying no more new gas or coal projects. They've snubbed their nose at the rest of the world. Emissions are on track to blow out, especially with the opening up of new gas provinces like the Beetaloo in the Northern Territory. We are the laughingstock on the clean energy front globally. We are considered to be a joke. And the final one, stronger on defence, borders and security. Well, we've just seen perhaps the greatest blunder since the Second World War in terms of management of national security. And that is, over 10 years since Tony Abbott got in, the coalition government has slashed funding to the Pacific Island nations. It's absolutely taken the long handle to the Solomon Islands. They've been crying out for aid. They've been treated badly, exploited for their cheap labour. Their aid has been smashed. And now the Chinese have just struck a security pact which will give them a strong presence on the Solomon Islands in our Pacific backyard. It is a complete daybark. So looking at those 5 major policy planks of the coalition government, we see that there is no substance to their claims. In some situations, quite the opposite. Let's take a quick look then about their overall claim, the central plank, what we're going to be hearing about for the next 3 or 4 weeks of this incredibly Homeric, epic, long election campaign, this painfully long 6-week election campaign. We're going to hear a lot of personal barbs, but we're going to hear a lot of stronger on the economy because they've blown up national security. They wasted billions of dollars on defence. That's Army, Navy and Air Force, all three, billions of dollars, and now the Chinese pact with the Solomon Islands. So we're going to hear a lot. We're going to hear a lot about the economy from here on in. Let's have a quick look. We've done a piece today on the website. We've had a look at their claims in detail, their track record to be superior economic managers. And here it is. Before the pandemic, when Josh was scrambling to achieve his holy grail, which is a balanced budget, the Reserve Bank was tapping him on the shoulder going, mate, come on, you need to stimulate the economy. We're going into recession. Indeed, Australia was in a per capita recession heading into the pandemic. Such was the poor management of the economy by Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and Prime Minister Scott Morrison. So bad that the Reserve Bank had to discreetly tap him on the shoulder and say, Josh, that's not the way to do it, mate. You have to stimulate the economy. Then, after cutting spending and being tapped by Philip Lowe, the Reserve Bank governor, the pandemic started. It shocked the whole world. Central banks had to move, and they all moved in concert in March to slash interest rates. But guess what good old Josh was doing? He was still tightening the screws. Instead of issuing new debt to stimulate the economy and come up with the programs, he was still pulling in the strings. He was still tightening the belts. He was going the wrong way. Finally, it came good, and we saw JobKeeper, and we saw the other measures. But unlike the Labor Party, when under Kevin Rudd in 2008, 2009, when the global financial crisis hit, Rudd did his cash splash. That cash splash was to people. The money went to people, and people spend money. It's called the velocity of money. It flows throughout the economy, and it makes things better. It stimulates the economy. But what did Josh do? He didn't give it to people. Josh gave it to companies. $80 billion of JobKeeper, just one example. Where did that go? $40 billion of it was wasted, a lot of it on foreign multinational corporations, great big property developers, sectors who weren't being hit but still put their hand out because the incompetence of this government. They listen to the business lobbyists because this is where they take their advice, not from people that know what they're doing, from people who have a stake in the game, who stand to profit. And the business lobbyists said, don't put in a clawback mechanism. Don't make it a loan. Just give them the money. And it worked, but at what expense? $40 billion wasted. $40 billion for companies that didn't need it, many of which went on to produce record profits and record revenue growth and benefit from the government's JobKeeper program, which allowed them to get rid of a whole lot of workers on the spot. The money went to companies, it went to asset prices, the property market went up, the ASX, the share market bounced strongly because it went to bonuses for executives, it went to dividends for shareholders, it went to cash reserves for corporations. So the economy shrank, and the government is now boasting about this incredible growth, this rebound, this amazing growth, best in the world, on a number of key metrics. And we've done all the work on this as well. michaelwest.com.au, you can see all the analysis we've done. They have lagged other countries. We used to be the best in the world economically 10 years ago, and now we're middling. We have lost our edge. We have lost our domination, despite the super cycle with China, the incredible demand for our iron ore and coal. That has continued apace. But the poor economic management of this government has meant that we have underperformed versus our peer nations. And so what happened when the pandemic was over? Well, just as many people are dying as ever, of course. It's not really over, although the media's just moved on. But what happened? They had their budget. It was an election budget. And so what do election budgets do? They stimulate the economy. They knew by then that inflation was taking off. The fact is, groceries went up, key essential goods for all Australians. The price of petrol went through the roof and is still hovering at very high levels. So they did a cash splash. But the problem, of course, is that inflation had already taken off. So they're contributing to inflation by throwing a whole lot of money out there to buy votes. Now, when you look at this in the scheme of things, it's actually quite small. The amounts they're spending on defence are through the roof, and we know how poor their defence spending record has been, on planes that don't fly, boats, frigates that don't work particularly well, and submarines that won't turn up till 2040, but we paid $6 billion to the French by stuffing that deal up. And so they gave all this cash away, made it look like a big cash splash, when they should have really been pulling in the belt, because now we're heading towards $1 trillion in debt. And of course, you never hear about debt and deficit anymore. It's all about jobs. They've just said, forget about debt and deficit. We don't like talking about that metric anymore. It's all about jobs. Because thanks to the freezer migration, the jobs figures are looking pretty damn good, and the way that they calculate them, of course. So why didn't they come into this election with a clear manifesto, with a clear policy document of strong policies for the future of this country? Because they're more interested in media management, in dribbling our policies helter-skelter, bit by bit, in order to manage the media, in order to control the 24-hour news cycle. This is government by public relations, government by media management. It is a triumph of image over substance. We're going to stay on it for you. Thank you so much for your support. As we sail towards the election, we'll keep you up to speed on all the developments in federal politics. We'll try to get you the real story, not the exclusive